Today we're looking at the DET's interactive speaking question. Now, this is a tough question. If you want to get a really high score, you need high-level words and phrases. And in today's video, I'm going to give you 30 of them. And I guarantee that at least 20 will be totally new for you. All right? So, if you want to have perfect vocabulary for interactive speaking, let's get started. Hello, I'm Francis from Last Minute English. Today we're looking at interactive speaking, one of the newer questions in the Duolingo English Test. We're going to look at 30 high-level words and phrases that you can learn so that you can get the best score possible when you do interactive speaking. Before we jump into those words, let's do a quick review, a 30-second review of what interactive speaking is all about. So interactive speaking is supposed to be like a real conversation. You'll get questions asked to you and you have to answer those questions. When you answer, you have up to 35 seconds to finish. And you'll get between 6 and 8 questions in total. Now, sometimes those will all be on the same subject. More often, they'll change topic halfway through. So 4 questions on one topic and 4 more questions on another topic. There's only one interactive speaking question on your exam, and it counts towards your conversation and comprehension subscores. So that's our review. Let's jump straight in and look at our 30 high-level words and phrases. To make this easier, I've divided them into 5 different areas. And also, all of these words and phrases are quite versatile. That means you can use them in many different situations. The first thing you have to do is to address the question. So imagine that your character that's asking you questions, you're having a conversation. Imagine that they ask you this.
I'd like to have a conversation about photography. Why do you think many people like to take photos of important life events?
So they're basically asking you, why do people like taking photos? And you could answer just by saying, well, the first reason is that people like to put things on Instagram. You could just start like that, but it's actually better to start by talking about the question itself, referring to the question. And this is good because it shows that you're really focused on the question itself. You've not just heard the word photography and you start talking about photography. Yes, photography, that's the cameras, isn't it? And people take photos of all kinds of things. Instead, you've really understood the question. You're focused. Also, it gives you a few seconds to plan your answer, so you're buying yourself some time. So we've got 6 expressions that we can use, and we'll look at the 6 and then I'll show you how we can use them related to this question about photography. So you could say, well, it's certainly true that, and then you say whatever it would be, whatever is true. Or you could say, I definitely say that the topic of is an interesting one. Or you could say, yeah, in my experience, is pretty common. Or you could say, I've never really considered before why, like why people like taking photos. But, and then you say why you think it is. Or, I agree, it's definitely true to say that, Or you could say, like taking photos or people really liking photography is something I've noticed in my own life. So if we're talking about photography in particular, let's look at a complete example. So we could say something like this. Well, it's certainly true that a lot of people like to get the camera out on special occasions. Or we could say, I've never really considered before why people like to take pictures when something significant happens. But maybe it's to do with being able to remember the event later. By the way, if you're enjoying this video and you want to keep preparing for the DET, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, interactive speaking questions always relate to different types of activities, like it could be studying, it could be working, it could be doing your hobbies. So it's really useful to have words to talk about different people. And we've got 6 great words talking about people and activities. So the first one is expert. We probably know this one, right? An expert, someone who knows something really well. But if you're not an expert, you're just getting started with something, but you're interested, you could be an amateur. So an amateur means you don't know it that well, but you like doing that hobby or that activity. If you're very passionate about something, you really, really like it, we can say you're an aficionado. And if you've just started doing something, we can say, oh, he's a newcomer. A newcomer. If you think something's a good activity, but you don't always do it yourself, but maybe you help other people to do it, you could be a supporter. And the opposite of that, if you think something's bad and you try to stop people doing it, you are an opponent. So let's see how we might use that in a full sentence about photography. So we could say something like this. Even if you're just an amateur at photography, it's possible to take a really good quality photo that loved ones can look back on in years to come. Just before we move to the next set of vocabulary, very quick reminder for you. If you're preparing for the DET and you want to make sure you get a high score first time, 120, 130, maybe even 140, we have got the perfect course for you. It's got everything you need to prepare. The link is here under the video. Make sure you check it out. Now, when it comes to interactive speaking, it's good to use a lot of adjectives, and we can use normal adjectives like nice, good, important, bad. But if we can throw a few higher level adjectives into our mix, then it gives us a much better chance of getting a high score. So let's look at 6. The first one is noteworthy. So this means something important and a little bit unusual, something we should pay attention to. And kind of the opposite of that is commonplace. This is something that's normal, we see it regularly, we don't have to pay too much attention to it. We could say something is understandable. So that's like if someone has reacted in a certain way and we expected them to react like that. Like, my friend's dog died, he was sad. That is understandable. We also have heartening. Heartening is something that's positive and encouraging. So if you get heartening news, it's like good news and you want to keep doing the thing that you're doing. And kind of the opposite of that is compromised, which is when something is less than ideal, like there's some kind of problem with whatever it is that you're working on. And a similar word to that is problematic, something that's causing problems or issues, maybe making whatever you're working on go slower or even fail. So again, if we're looking at photography, we could use a phrase like this. We could say, I guess it's not surprising that people want to have a record when something noteworthy happens in their lives. But of course, remember, these words are very versatile. We can use them for different topics. For example, if your interactive speaking question was all about books and we wanted to use noteworthy, we could say something like this. Many people enjoy non-fiction books. For example, biographies of noteworthy historical figures. Now that's the same meaning as important people from history. But if we say noteworthy historical figures, it's much higher language. Or for example, if you're talking about taking exams, you could use noteworthy like this. You could say, failing one test might not be especially noteworthy, but if a student consistently achieves poor results, they'll probably need more support from their teacher. So those are 3 example sentences with noteworthy, but my challenge for you, can you make your own sentence using the word noteworthy? Have a try and write it in the comments. So in our vocabulary journey so far, we've looked at some phrases for starting your answer. We've looked at some nouns, also some adjectives. Next, we're going to look at adverbs. So those are the words that often end in ly and they tell you how someone is doing something. So you could say, frankly, and that shows that you're being quite direct, quite honest. And very often, frankly, will have kind of a negative opinion coming after it. If you say apparently, then you have to tell us something that other people have told you. Apparently is not the same as like clearly. Instead, you might say, well, apparently, my friend Tom has just started a new job. It means somebody else told you about your friend Tom. You can use admittedly, and that's when you're being honest that you might not have like some knowledge, there's something that maybe you don't know. The next one's kind of an easy one. It's surprisingly. I think you know that one, when something is a surprise. The next one is ideally. This is one that I use a lot. It means like in a perfect world. And when we say ideally, we're saying the thing that we want to happen, but we know that probably it won't happen. And finally, regrettably. So this is when we wish that something wasn't true, but we know that it is true. So let's take a look at a few examples of those, also about photography. So first we could say, apparently, some families pay for professional photographers at events like birthdays and christenings. So what we're saying with apparently is, I've never seen this myself, but I've heard that other people have told me that. Then you can say, frankly, and remember, frankly is very direct and usually with a negative opinion. You could say, frankly, I think some people take lots of pictures so they can show off to others on social media. And then finally, a negative thing, regrettably. Regrettably, there are some childhood events I can't remember because there are no photos to look back on. The final thing we're going to look at is talking about personal experiences. This is a great way to add a little bit more detail to your interactive speaking answers. And we're going to look at 6 phrases that can help you introduce your personal experience. So you can say, personally speaking, from my point of view, as far as I'm concerned, from my own experience, based on what I know, and if memory serves me well. And for example, you could say, personally speaking, I treasure my graduation photos, for example. So there we go, 30 high-level words and phrases, all for interactive speaking in 5 different areas. I would love to know, actually, this will be very interesting for me, how many of them about were new for you? You could say like 5 new, you could say 30 all new. Just let me know your number in the comments. Now, if you want to practice a full interactive speaking question, we have a video exactly for that. You can find the link here or just here under the video. So make sure you check that out next. I'm Francis from Last Minute English. Thank you very much for watching. Good luck in your DET. I'll see you next time.